one of the things that we really enjoyed was learning how to rope early so that we could join in that process. There weren't many women roping, I think just one other when we first started. And so the men, of course, had some thoughts on how we were doing and what we might do differently during the process. But.
Okay. Well, there was a lot of talk about the Norris boys. That came up in a lot of my research. Now, those were the bachelors of San Ramon. Eligible bachelors or just bachelors by choice?
By choice, I think.
Okay, so how was the dating scene? Were you even allowed to date? Was that a concept foreign to this area at that time? And each one of you, I would like an answer from.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know about that. Why didn't the Norris brothers get married? We had two aunts, Emma Rose and Mary, were unmarried. We had two more aunts, Dora and May in Castro Valley, not married. The Norris brothers were not married. You know, I don't know if that's generalizing too much, but you know, and I don't know why that happened. But yeah, I think as far as dating went, sounded like today, I guess, to me. Maybe my sisters have some other opinion,
but it was not restricted in any way. It was still
no,
prevalent.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Anything you would like to add, Sandy or Roxanne?
I just think they just didn't get married. I don't know that there might have been any particular reason. Maybe life just moved right along and pretty soon it was past them. I don't know. But we were very fortunate because we got lots of attention from all those people that weren't married.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to know.
I'd like to add that so the Norris brothers, you know, they babysat for us, Noel and Lee, Noli, we called them. And one of my favorite memories growing up was Noli would take me fishing. We had little stock ponds scattered around for the cattle to drink, and quite often they had fish in them. And we'd go out there. One was pretty good size, had a little boat, you know, and you row out there and get up early in the morning, go fishing, and you know, just kind of a fun thing to do. But you know, they were very, very good guys. You know, somehow, I mean, there's a lot of history that I probably don't understand about you know, the Bishops and the Norrises, but the Norrises had a pretty sizable operation in San Ramon early on, and then you know, some people say they lost the ranch in a card game or something, but anyway, it's funny that these kind of bachelor guys just hanging out in this old house, driving their Model A pickup around, lots of fun, but anyway.
They never had an indoor bathroom. They always had an outhouse, and we could go sit in their yard with them and shoot blue jays. And it was they brought life along to us, life from the 1800s. It just kind of moved right into our age, and being at the Norrises
was a helpful thing to have these kind of people who are acting as your role models and your sources of information, connecting the past to your present.
We're our closest neighbors, Aparna. So it was really just them and us for a while, and Grandpa on the other side.
And then you expanded your circle. So tell me about your schooling. How was it? It was a very small school. What kind of subjects were you taught? And Jeff, at what point did you decide, I'm going to go into the ranching business? And did you ever feel that school was unnecessary for learning that?
Well, I enjoyed school. I mean, it was educational, but it was also social. You know, my 8th grade graduating class was 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls, and you know, it was just a good time. It was a 3-room school, and so the little room had first, second, and third. The middle room had fourth and fifth, and I guess something like that. But
Yeah.
but it was because you know, kids helped each other. I guess probably what I took away from that more than anything was an emphasis on English language. You know, not a lot of rocket science, not a lot of agricultural stuff, but you know, just I mean, we didn't know any different. You know, it was a shock to go to high school. It's like you're in this tiny little school, and then all of a sudden, bam! Where did all these people come from? But you know, I kind of shied away from. I mean, I worked summers, and you know, I enjoyed it, but it was like, wow, this is just a lot, and so I really didn't get an interest in agriculture until no, probably after high school. And then I started looking around and, you know, well, what are the other things I could do? You know, I go to Hollywood or something, and you know, the challenge, it was San Ramon was growing from rural to suburban and changing dramatically, and you know, looked like opportunities to me, both agricultural production and land wise. And so, you know, it seemed like kind of the right thing to do. And so you know, I did continue my education in agriculture after that.
And I'm very grateful, and I know Roxy is too, that you've continued
Yeah.
keeping the ranch, Jeff. I can't imagine the amount of work and hard work and 24/7 work. Yeah.
Well,
Do
you
you-
have to like it, you know.
Do you still get up at 4 in the morning? You mentioned getting up and getting the horses ready. Do you still have to get up 4 in the morning every day?
No, I wouldn't even consider it. I won't tell you what time I get up.
Okay, so let's talk to Sandy and Roxanne. What was your favorite part about school? I know you had one day in the whole school year when you went to your family's home pool to swim. That would have to be your favorite day of the year. But other than that, what was school like for you, your enjoyable experience, and subjects? What did you enjoy the most?
Census Grammar School was just like our community. It was small and secure. We knew everybody. The families did school carnivals together and lots of potlucks at the hall. We would go there for plays, for graduation. Santa Claus would come. Grammar school was just delightful. I loved it. High school was okay, but it was culture shock after my graduating class from 8th grade. There were 8 of us, and going to high school then to have all the communities of Danville, Alamo, Diablo. It was a learning experience, and so you grow to adapt to what your situation is. And going to college up at Chico was my biggest move away from home, and obviously I ended up back where I started. So that's, education has been a lifetime experience, actually.
Was that a scary thought to move away that far away from home to go to Chico State when you made that decision? I'm assuming you made that decision to go.
Why did I go?
No, was it a hard decision you felt in looking back, that going so far away from home to Chico State? Was it easy?
I had friends who were going there. It just seemed appealing. You can always look back on at opportunities that you didn't take that maybe you should have, but once they're past, it's too late. So you move on. And
Of course. How about you, Sandy? How was it for you?
I loved grammar school too, and we were in first, second, and third grade together, Roxy, Jeff, and I, and we were taught by our principal and Mrs. Gans, who was wonderful. And when we first moved into the school, which was brand new, Roxy had missed the one-room schoolhouse by 1 year and moved the first year of the 3-room schoolhouse, but there weren't enough students to fill all 3 rooms in the beginning. So anyway, I loved grammar school, and it was fun that even when we were in first grade, we got attention from the 8th graders because we were all there together, and we knew them. And but for me, I have a little different experience about high school. There was only one other girl in my 6 students graduating 8th grade, and we weren't exactly the same people. And so when I got to high school, it was, yahoo, look at, I have a selection. And I guess probably I kind of have that personality, but I really loved high school.
And I'm assuming you're talking about the San Ramon Valley High School.
Yes, we are. That's where my father went.
So what do you
Sandy, talk about a little bit about the students that came when we were 6th, 7th, 8th, the little community of people from out Bollinger Canyon.
Oh, you should say that, Rox.
Oh,
You should
okay.
say that, Rox.
So during that time, the late 50s, the Nike base was established up in Bollinger Canyon at the end. So the families came to live there, and their kids attended school. So that was a learning experience right there, to have the Army kids coming and becoming part of our classes. So that was really an interesting experience. I don't think we realized the importance of the Nike base, but that was a big deal to the community. So that's all.
Did you feel the children had a different personality as opposed to the children growing up in a more rural agricultural setting when they were interacting with you?
In my grade case, Willie Bright came, and he was neat, and it was like, oh, a new boy, a worthy boy. And so I was thrilled about Willie Bright coming, and I don't know, I guess there was some sort of we weren't that country because, you know, where we stood out if we would go to town as country, I don't think, because Mom and Dad were so culturally interested in things like that. So I think Willie was a great fit in our class.
How was your, the corporal punishment, which was pretty prevalent? Was it something that was prevalent in your school? Was it used? And were you
I just wanted to add, sorry, Aparna, and I'll get back to corporal punishment, which we really didn't see much of, although we may have deserved. Okay, but also on the other hand, on the other side from the Nike base workers were the walnut pickers when they would come every year. And we loved the walnut pickers. First of all, it was a new thing. I mean, we could look forward to it every year. The same kids, pretty much the same families who we had grown close to. over the years. And so that was really fun having the walnut pickers come in their season.
How was the interaction with them? Was it on a daily basis or once in a while?
Their camp was near our home, and we went over and played with them.
On a daily basis.
Yeah.
So tell me about the corporal punishment. You said you deserved it, but you didn't receive it, which is nice, I think. I don't know.
Not very much, let me say that.
Okay.
Mom
So-
and Dad were cool at all times, pretty much.
And how was parental involvement in the children's education? Was it like the helicopter parents of today that we hear about, or was it just do your thing and parents left you to do what you like?
I might weigh in on that. Compared to today, you know, it was remarkable. It was, you know, they were work, and then, you know, our parents were very busy at all times, and so they would go out at night and they'd say, well, you know, your dinner's, you have the Swanson TV dinner in the refrigerator there, you know, help yourself, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. And you know, it was like, you guys are on your own. I mean, it's during the day, at night, and I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but
But it made you responsible adults is what I'm hearing.
It was actually rare. We were pretty excited when they were going out, but the growing up part, Mom and Dad were very involved in our lives, and when we were young, they had all these activities that they made happen for us, like Roxy talked about the events at the hall and that sort of thing. But as we grew up and I guess became okay to be around, Mom and Dad involved us in everything they did, pretty much. We were invited to things with their friends, to their parties. We went water skiing pretty much every weekend during the water skiing season, and they seemed to they acted like they enjoyed being with us.
And church was a very essential part of the family dynamics. Which church were you going to at that time?
Community Presbyterian, that's where I still go, and where Mary and Rose and Grandpa went. Particularly Mary, I think, was very involved and involved in the women's group. I think it was called Rebecca's.
Okay. So before we talk about the famous roundups, the spring roundups, there was a potato salad pandemic. And can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that happened, and what was the effect of that? How long did that last?
Gee, I don't know if I'm the right one to address this, but so the Roundup lunches going from one ranch to another, everyone would bring a dessert, a cake, a pie, or something like that, and a lot of people would bring a main course or salad or something. And I think in this case, somebody brought some potato salad with mayonnaise that had been sitting out in the sun for too long, and it just basically got mixed into this giant bowl. And then the serving, which you may have a picture or two of that, the serving line goes through, everybody gets the same mixture of stuff, and bingo, people are off to the hospital. And you know, it was kind of embarrassing, frankly. And but you know, I don't know how many people were affected.
But do you think that would be cause for a lawsuit in today's times?
Oh, probably.
Everything is a lawsuit these days, so I'm assuming that would. So let's talk about these roundups. I mean, I saw pictures, and Fred started this, and he was essentially a brainchild of how to make it an event, and it looks painful. when you look at the pictures? Is it? And could you explain the process?
Well, I would say that actually the history of roundups goes back pretty far to the Spaniards and early California. I'd say a lot of cattle production practices date back to, Mexico and Spain and all that. Roundups actually were occurring out in the Doherty Valley. Cattle were just roaming free, and then one rancher would claim these cattle and they would get the whole group together and pick out which cows belonged to them and then the associated calf. And it was a pretty complicated ordeal. And I thought it was interesting that in the middle of all this was the whiskey wagon. And so it was right in the middle of everything, and then everybody would stop and have a drink and go back to work. And you can imagine the whole thing was pretty wild and crazy. Ours were not quite like that. Fred was a promoter, and at that point in time, a lot of people were interested in the subject. We'd have television crews out there for a long time. We would invite classes of kids, grade school children coming up in a bus and hanging on the fence. And the process itself involves earmarking, which will be like taking a little notch out of the ear so you can identify an animal from a distance. Sometimes the brands would grow over with hair and you couldn't see them. And so we'd send kids home with a little piece of ear, they'd show it to their parents and they'd say, oh, where in the world did you get that? And, it's painful. It's not meant to be. The effort is to minimize, the impact. It's not good for the animals, but it's branding still is the only legal means of identification for cattle. And so some people do it, some don't, but you are running a bit of a risk if you don't have some sort of permanent identification.
So what is and I don't understand this, so I have to ask you this. When I drive by and see the cattle with a tag from their ear, is that similar to the earrings that we wear? Is that the process? I mean, to identify them instead of branding them?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of ear tags will get lost. They'll pull them out or they'll fall out, so that's not a very permanent mark. There are electronic IDs, with a little chip like you put in a dog, and those are becoming more common, really more for point of source identification. But yeah, ear tags, really it's for the convenience of the producer to keep track of each animal and what are they up to, and whatever information you have.
And that would be color coordinated. I'm assuming different colors would mean different things.
Yes.
Oh, I see. I'm feeling educated already. So now this takes a heart of steel to go through this process of rounding up, branding. When was the turning point? And I know Sandy and Roxanne, I saw a couple of pictures of you on horses. So obviously you were also very involved in the ranch life. When was it that actively Jeff took on this role and started handling more of the operations and you started moving away? Was it because of this whole process or was it just home life made you?
Roxy and I did things that we enjoyed doing, and Jeff did all the hard part. I remember that, for example, the hay, in order to get the hay off the truck into the high barn, it had to have a tractor back up and pull a cable so that the hook went up. And Jeff would be in the barn where it was really hot and dusty and hay flying, and Roxy and I would take turns driving the tractor back and forth. And that was one example of kind of the difference in our lives. From my perspective, we did what we felt like doing. And one of the things that we really enjoyed was learning how to rope early so that we could join in that process. There weren't many women roping, I think just one other when we first started. And so the men, of course, had some thoughts on how we were doing and what we might do differently during the process. But I can speak for myself that we didn't really very often do hard work.
You just did the other stuff, the enjoyable stuff. And when was it that, Jeff, you
I
decided?
have a different thought. Rex, what do you think?
Oh, I thought you both felt the same way. Roxanne, yes. How did you feel about ranch life and about the roundup? When did you decide that was not for you?
Wow. I don't think I did. Up until just fairly recently, gathering the cattle has been just one of my favorite parts of it. Riding through the hills, looking for cattle, bringing them in, being involved that way has always been so important to me. I love that life. So acknowledging that what Jeff does is really the hard work, not only his brawn, but also the intelligence it takes to run a ranch. A lot of really tough decisions. So I'm grateful that he has been so involved in it. And I am just so grateful for the part I've been able to play, which is really minor.
So Jeff, Roxanne said something, so I was going to ask that question later on, but let's do that right now. What is a typical day-to-day operation and what does it look like? What does it entail in terms of input from you, management skills from you, and then having to work with animals and humans pretty much on a day-to-day basis? Can you explain that to us, please?
Sure. Yeah, well, maybe just get back to your previous question. You know, I kind of took over after college, and I didn't take over. I guess I had been leading up to that, managing some handful of employees and doing certain jobs if I wasn't in school, and mostly in the summer. And then our parents passed away at a very early age in their early 60s, and so it kind of got dropped in my lap. But you know, as I guess I decided to take it on when I was after high school, when I went to college. But anyway, so what do we do? It's very actually unromantic. A lot of it is repair and maintenance. You know, it seems like we're constantly in the process of rebuilding something and making it work better. The cattle, the cattle are free range. They're out there. You try not to harass them too much. Just let them enjoy what they're doing. So occasionally you'll have to get them in and, you know, we're kind of big on fly control and internal parasites and vaccination programs and like that. So to keep them healthy, I mean, they live better than we do. You know, they have supplemental protein. They have a broad array of minerals that we supplement their feed with. You know, all the vaccinations you can think of. And so, I mean, I think our cattle are pretty happy, pretty healthy. Nancy says if I was a cow, I'd want to live here, and
Oh.
I think she's right. And
Yeah.
But, you know, there's also a lot of management. I mean, we're involved in, you know, a lot of, you know, when you're a landowner, we're not a huge landowner like we used to be, but you still have stuff that you have to address, you know, regulations, you know, bookkeeping, and really just it's all very long-term stuff. You know, there's few parts of ranching that are just changing day to day. I mean, everything is like seems like a 5-year investment at least. And
It doesn't sound anything like Hollywood movies. It sounds pretty, pretty tedious and
not so much.
and boring to to a person who's hearing like this is hard work. I mean, so when you are doing these things, I'm assuming there's cattle insurance or something insurance nowadays. Everything has insurance. Is that health insurance for cattle that you have to sign up for?
Oh, you can. You know, we typically don't. If we're transporting cattle, sometimes we'll insure the truckloads, but it's more liability. Liability is the big insurance issue for us. And, you know, somebody even trespassing will trip over a stick and take us to court. And, you know, I mean, it's, even if it's not real, the threat is there, and it seems real.
Do you have names for your cattle? Are there any favorites?
Yeah, there are a few. You know, they all have, typically they have a number, you know, in their ear tag, and you know, try to keep pretty complete records on everything they're up to, and like that.
A lot of work. So let's talk about going back to the sign, San Ramon sign that disappeared after the freeway came. Then the incorporation happened. Jeff, you once mentioned that ranchers got squeezed, and that's how we have homes in on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. A lot of changes were happening in rapid succession. When did you start feeling that the writing is on the wall that it's going to be over soon with all the homes coming in, and then the decision to sell and the opposition to it? And I can repeat the questions if there are too many.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, you know, I think really the turning point was the 680 freeway going down the middle of the valley. Shortly thereafter, on the Dublin end, you had Volk McLean building homes down there, selling for $8,000 or $9,000, and you know, civilization was starting to creep in rather apparently, and you could see it coming. The writing was on the wall. Western Electric had planned on their telephone assembly plant where the Bishop Ranch is, and that triggered I don't know that they're still in existence, but an assessment district which kind of taxes the property owners for some perceived benefit of you know, future activities, and the county said, well, you have this property and it's next to all this, you know, incorporation or growth that's going on, so therefore you need to pay us a bunch of money to build these roads. And so we got stuck with these giant constructions of Al Costa Boulevard and others that you know, we couldn't afford to pay it, and housing was, you know, the housing market was pretty bad, and you couldn't give the land away. So just, you know, just as the county was poised to jump, you have like 6 months to pay it, and you know, we were able to sell some property there. But really, the decision to sell is not necessarily voluntary. It's really more that your taxes are going up, you know, you're kind of forced to sell. It might be an inheritance situation. It's different than living out in the middle of Nebraska or something, where nothing really changes. And so there's a lot of pressure. There's some opportunities. We did choose to develop a piece of property up off of Norris Canyon Road, and very happy we did. And we were able to preserve about 75% of it in open space. And but yeah, it's it's part of the whole matrix of what you do around here. Is I'm not going into land development by any means, but you try to hold on to what you have.
Of course. And I don't think very many residents in the Norris Canyon Estates are even aware that there is a pioneer family home there and living right in their midst. And I'm hoping to educate the residents through this effort. Now, you are all very involved in the community. I know about Sandy's and Roxanne's. Jeff, I was reading up on yours many years back. 85, I believe, is when you joined the Library Foundation Board and worked with some pretty big names at that time. Why did you feel it was necessary to join that board, and what were you trying to attain?
Well, it kind of goes back to a discussion we were having earlier. It's sort of a family history. Even Christian was involved in, community activities, and very fortunately, that was sort of, we weren't pressured by any means, but to become involved with the community, and I know you can appreciate this, it pays dividends. You're helping other people, and that comes back to benefit you, and it's you do your part, and it seems to make it opens doors. It makes your life fuller, and so
it's the community. Yes, it's being a part of the extended community through community service. Roxanne, why 4-H? You're a big proponent of 4-H. And of course, you served in other capacities with the fire district, and you have the Museum of the San Ramon Valley. What was it about 4-H that stood out for you?
4-H? I think 4-H is a wonderful business and economics teaching method. So much of what you do, although what Sandy and I did in 4-H with sewing and cooking, but sorry.
Roxanne disappeared from our screen. There she is.
Yeah, my battery's running out. 4-H is a really valuable experience for kids. They learn about business. They have to keep records. They have to justify their expenses and their profit at the end. 4-H is, I'm sure, never been involved in scouting. I don't know about those principles. But 4-H, being sponsored by the university system throughout the country, the university's thoughts were, we're learning new techniques, new ways to do things better in agriculture, and so let's teach the kids. And that's what 4-H has, great backing and technical partnership with the university system.
And it's a trend.
Roxy and Jeff have both been leaders in those groups for different categories. Jeff steers, I think, and Roxy turkeys and pigs and horses and you name it. But I wanted to address the the San Ramon sign didn't disappear. Because I love the, what happened was that Roxy and Randy and I can't remember who else, went down one evening when the freeway was completed and backed the truck into.
Oh gosh, no, Sam, we accidentally backed up and the sign was there.
That's what I meant. Yeah, we
Fell
backed.
into the truck.
Yeah, it fell into the truck. So since it was down and there was no point in putting it back up, we took it to Mom and Dad's garage because to sit there when they came home, because we felt that Dad should have the sign. And because one of the other main players in San Ramon were the Ferreras, I believe that Billy Ferreira got the sign at the other end of town. So nobody seemed mad about it, the accident that happened and all that.
He was the fire chief, right? Bill Ferreira, at one point, the volunteer. So that's a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing that. Sandy, you, and I always wanted to ask you this, Shepherd's Gate. Why Shepherd's Gate? I've been associated with many domestic violence groups, but why that one?
Thank you for that opportunity. Well, it started with our cousin working there, being the first employee of the founder, Alice Ann Candla. And our cousin, Haley Matthews, volunteered there. And we started, because of Roxy and Nancy's idea, we started fixing meals there. And Shepherd's Gate is a home for abused and homeless women and children. And Roxy knows all about it, so it's okay. And so I ended up being invited to join the board very early on, and this is my 26th year of volunteering there, and I will do it for as long as I can. It's my passion, and like Jeff says, when the dividends of doing public service are in my mind greater than what I give in everything. You can't catch up with God, is the way I look at it.
I agree. And so patriotism runs deep in the family. You mentioned that a couple of times early on. Carrying a family name that's essentially a legacy in the valley and beyond is a huge responsibility. How do you envision the future for the Wiedemann family, and how would you like the family to be remembered by future generations? And any one of you can answer.
Well, I might weigh in on that. We have two sons, Christian and Clayton, and they are both, they both have worked on the ranch. They're not full-time and, fully employed with helping here, but they have an interest. They are involved with a group of ranchers outside of California, and where they kind of compare notes on the economics of our each one's particular operation. So it's kind of a jury of your peers, and it's been very helpful for them to understand what we're doing and what they want to do. But they definitely want to continue at least the cattle part of it. I'm not sure about farming, maybe, but they're involved. They appreciate the history, the heritage, and sometimes, frankly, I call it heritage baggage, because you have this responsibility to behave a certain way, but all in all, I don't know where the ranching business is going to go in the next 10 or 20 years, but for us, but I'm pretty confident that somehow it will survive.
Any thoughts you would like to add, Sandy or Roxanne, to this?
Definitely. Heritage baggage, that is an interesting one. And I only fit it in my life as a way of keep your nose clean. Pretty much, I mean, although it was true for everyone in San Ramon, it was so small and so communal that you know, you wanted to keep your nose clean. But being a Wiedemann was such a proud, and is and forever will be a proud heritage. Our family was not only involved in the community, they were good, and they cared about people, and they looked after people hands-on and in every way they could. And Mom was very involved in teaching sewing and cooking and those sort of helpful, essential needs. And so I always walked tall to be a Wiedemann, and will forever.
Thank you. And how about you, Roxanne? Do you have anything to add to that?
I certainly am proud of my background. I realize how fortunate I am to be a Wiedemann, but also my husband, Randy, of 53 years. Oh my gosh, he just fit right into the family. It was a wonderful thing.
And I met him briefly when I visited you a couple of years back, and I recall just the brief interaction. It was, I could sense that he belonged where he was. So I can understand. Nancy, we already talked about. Jeff, you already said she is an intricate part of this whole thing, understands and maybe does certain things better than you. The people I have to mention is Clayton, who received an award from the Board of Supervisors for his bravery. I don't know how many times I drove by Highland Avenue to identify this site. I probably would have ended up in the ditch myself trying to how does it feel to see the fifth generation essentially taking on the reins and now moving forward the Wiedemann name and the Wiedemann tradition in one way or another? Must be a proud moment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, they're great guys.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're both, like I was saying, involved in ranching. I mean, it's, you know, ranching is, to say, it's difficult when you live in an area like where we are. It's very hard to support a family in the cattle business, or really most any type of farming. So they have their hands full, but in that regard. But as far as you know, family traditions of you know, helping, you know, being involved in the community, they both have served on a local agricultural land trust. Clayton was involved with the Cattlemen's Association as a director. You know, they're kind of following the same paths, and but they're mostly just wonderful people.
Yeah.
I bet. And so in closing, there was a tradition.
But Aparna, we need to add, if I may, that Roxy has a fabulous daughter, Maddie, named after her great-grandmother.
Oh, do you want to add something about Maddie that we should know? Something special about her?
Well, I'll say, because maybe it's easier for me to say that she's very involved in raising with her husband 2 children, but also she's always been one to from childhood step out and help others, and she is definitely, as well as the Lindsay heritage, carrying on the Wiedemann heritage.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Yes.
So in closing, yes,
our
please.
daughter Maddie is terrific, and no one could ask for a better daughter.
Yeah.
And her 2 kids, my grandkids are great. And fortunately, Maddie has a wonderful husband. Again, he fit right into the family. So So it's super life for me.
What now I have to ask you one thing that you kept talking about all these people fitting in. I've heard, Jeff, you are very tall. Now, is there I'm glad I'm sitting down for this and doing this through Zoom. There's only so much high heels can do, but is that also something of a tradition that's been going on? Everyone is tall in the family and people who are joining the family are equally tall?
Yeah, you know, Clayton's wife, Susan, is, you know, she's not huge, but she's, you know, tallish and wonderful gal. We visited some relatives, have on, I guess, a few occasions back in Germany there, and just because we thought it would be fun to make a connection. And it turns out that our 42nd cousin or whatever she is a tall woman, and our kids are 6'10" and 6'6", and so she has two boys that are just as tall. So I think there is a, you
A
know,
tall factor going on,
family
yes. Well,
Dad
connection
was
there.
6'6.5", which for his generation was really something. And also our grandfather was tall. I'm not sure, was he 6'2" or something like that? But his sister, Mary, was very tall. And so like
it's in
that.
the
We
DNA
love
probably.
being tall.
Yes, and it's the German heritage probably and in your DNA. So you have reconnected with family back in Germany, and it's a good thing to have that. There was a 50-year tradition, annual kite flyers that went away. Is there anything you would like to see retained for eternity in this area? And again, why did that go away? If you can elaborate on that, but something that you would like to see retained forever.
Well, it hasn't really gone away. It's just postponed sometimes this year for obvious reasons. It was scheduled for Earth Day. But last year was that we lost Randy Lindsay. And so there are different reasons why it has been postponed, but Roxy and Randy actually started it, and people love it. And sometimes it's a massive number of people, and sometimes like really cold, wet weather, not as many. And it's a bring a can of chili and a side dish, and then we pour all the chili into a pot, and everybody makes themselves like it, and they think it's fun. And so anyway, we hope to carry on the tradition here at my house. We have been doing it for the last few years. We've done it. Roxy and Randy hosted it over at the on the Norris Canyon Ranch, and Jeff and Nancy have been a part of it. And so it's something that we love doing. People now are saying, when is Kite Day? And it's not essentially like broadcast because it can be too many people, but we invite our friends to bring their friends and that sort of thing. And
so there's no fixed date as such. It's just a month around, obviously when. Yeah, okay. And so one thing that you would like to see continue in the valley in San Ramon, is there anything you can think of?
Something I'd like to say is, Aparna, thank you for your interest in our family. I am so appreciative. And to me, it's really important that the people who come here know that there was a history before San Ramon became a city, and a history of a long ways back from the native tribes that were here, through the pioneers and settlers and ranchers and farmers who came, the business people. San Ramon Valley has a great history. So thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you. Thank you. It's important.
Along those lines, I'd like to say, because I missed the opportunity, believe it or not, on the growing San Ramon. I remember Grandpa Wiedemann saying, "We get to live here. Why shouldn't they?" And when people move into the valley now, they say nobody else can live here because I want to live here the way it is now, and I don't want to be bothered with other people. And that really gets on my nerves because maybe that was admitting too much, but I just feel I would like to close with thank you, Aparna, so much, and let's work out how we can have other people who want to live here.
And live in harmony with all communities.
Well, wouldn't that be great?
That would be the most wonderful thing, vision for us. But thank you for making the time to sit down and do this. I don't think we could have done this if we weren't sheltering in place. Coordinating is always hard. So I really appreciate it. And Jeff, it was wonderful talking to you. Hopefully
My pleasure.
in person someday. But
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Wonderful talking to all of you.
Well, thank you very much.